Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 6 of the Askem Studios Wedding Podcast. My name is Todd, and this is...
Kelley.
Kelley, why are you saying it like that? Why do you insist on being so difficult to work with today?
Difficult to work with.
Yes.
Although I did have fun this morning in church, like being like, oh no, I'm cross shooting you and I'm in your way, because I was doing photography and Todd was doing videography. And so I was having a little bit of fun with him and like getting in his shot. And he was like, you just ruined my shot. And I thought it was kind of fun. So
yeah. Today, speaking of sentimental things to remember, we are talking about the importance. You just did, apparently. So,
okay.
But today we are talking about adding the value of sentimental pieces to your day. And so particularly what I was thinking about talking about was maybe explaining to our couples to be, or to couples that are looking to book, why it's important to just remember those sentimental things. And so, Kelley, I was wondering if you could maybe start out by talking about, like, what have we seen that have added value to the end result of our product that we're delivering to couples?
So I think it's different for every couple. It's kind of like that. I think it's asking what something is, if this is sentimental to you, is kind of like asking, is this romantic to you? Like, romance and sentiment is different for different people. Like, some people find, different value in different things. But I think when we're talking about, sentimental, so to speak, I think that's when you really started getting more into like your details, and like the little moments that are maybe unexpected, or things that you would not necessarily have thought of like right off the cuff. So like when your photographer is asking you for your detail shots and things like that, there's, a lot of, not only brides, but also grooms, may have something that was passed down, in the family, or there may be something that belonged to somebody who is no longer with them, whether that's a brother or, a sibling or an aunt, uncle, whatever it may be. Just those little kind of trinkets, so to speak, that may not necessarily hold great meaning in like the big picture of the day. But when you look back, you're like, oh yeah, I remember that. And I that touched my heart. Yeah. I also think moments, like for me, like I love getting a chance to see the interaction between like her mom and her son on the day of. And of course I see more of that because I'm with the guys. But, and I'm sure it's the same thing with like the bride and the mom, but, I think that like I always appreciate those moments when, I think just because our son is in that stage of life too, where he's transitioning out of being a kid or whatnot. But, I enjoy those moments that not everybody gets to see.
You had actually brought up a couple different things there. So you had brought up about the details. So one of the things I was actually thinking about, because we had received an email, this week going over an upcoming wedding we have in October. And so one of the things that was mentioned was to have like the details ready. And we've been on some weddings where maybe they're planning the wedding themselves. They don't have a professional invitation or, an RSVP or a save the date. And so one of the things I was thinking about was, on those weddings where it comes to like getting into the details, like you just mentioned, a lot of the couples do have like an engagement session. So they do have photos from, and so where I was thinking about the other day was maybe on the weddings that you may be planning yourself, it may be a good idea to just kind of like make something that looks like a little bit of an invitation. So it adds some detail to whenever we're putting the details together, or the photographer's putting the details together to capture that it's added a little more substance to your ring, to your earrings, to, a lot of couples do perfume and cologne. But, having those, homemade items would bring value. And then as far as like the trinkets, like, you see it a lot on the bouquet. There will be a family member that's passed. So whether that's the grandmother, whether that's the mother, or a father. We had actually just had a wedding in DC the other week. The groom had a pin that was made. His father had passed away. And so when he was during the getting ready process, I noticed that he was wearing his pin. And so it definitely does add some value to your product, to your video, because looking back, you may not remember that you had those things, but it does help tell the story as well. And ultimately, that's what we're doing. We're telling the story of your day.
Yeah. Or even like, things like mementos, like through like your relationship span. Like, it doesn't necessarily have to be like, long history or whatever. Like, I know there's some people like that's not me. Like I don't keep all of the little things, but there are some people that, like keep dried flowers, like maybe like the first time, you guys exchange flowers or something like that. So like, any of those things that, are kind of important to you, it definitely does add kind of like another dimension, kind of thing. I know one of the things that, we kind of advertised in the last couple of weeks was, adding in like a, your engagement video, if you guys videoed that, or, contrasting like maybe to like, mom and dad's, first dance, or, cause sometimes there's video from that as well. Just so there's different aspects that you can pull together to, make it more personal, and make it maybe stand out from, the church. I want to say the word traditional, but I would just say make it stand out, so that it's more individual to you. And there's nothing wrong with asking, a photographer or videographer, or, even like your officiant, like, hey, this is things that, we want to be conveyed, during our ceremony, like, DJ, hey, these are the songs that are really important to us. Where would you recommend putting these in our playlist?
It's amazing to me when we do these consultations that we hear of like so many little integral parts that are going to be, we like to be very detailed. So we like to ask the questions in general that aren't going to catch us off guard. But even when we get there the day of, not that we're being caught off guard, but even when we get there the day of, there are definitely a lot of different elements that are unique to every day. I know that we had a wedding in Northern Virginia that Emmanuel was on, and so there was actually like 4 roses on the chairs for family members that had had been lost recently, and we are members of a lot of groups, and so we see, or at least I see, a lot of questions being asked about, I want to remember this individual. How can we do that? I know that Galen and Rachel, there was a chair set aside where Galen's father's flight jacket was on the chair. And so I really think that like seeing all these different elements, it may not be a common question or a common thing that, it seems to be thought about, but it may not be something that's necessarily talked about from a vendor standpoint. And I think it's important as a vendor for us to be making sure we ask as well. Like we do ask, like, is there anything in your ceremony that's going to be different? So items like that. But what are some of the more memorable, quote unquote, mementos that you've seen that have really stuck out to you?
Yeah. So I know we had one couple that the mom, I think, had actually sewn like a piece, I think, of like a baby blanket, like into, I don't know if it was into the suit or something like that. So it was just, it was something very individual between like, the mom and the son. And I thought that like, that was just really nice. You don't always, get to see that. There's definitely a lot of things that are like kind of attached to like the bouquets. That's a pretty popular thing.
We've seen with the father of the bride, when they're doing a first look with their dad, we've seen like pieces, like little photos that have been screen printed that have been put on ties, embroidery going into the ties. Yeah. So those are some special moments between like, daughter and dad, right, that can definitely be captured. Just trying to think of some of the other things we've seen.
Jewelry being passed down in generations, like earrings and things like that. I think that's a popular thing to do.
With the wedding that we just rolled out this past week, with the full highlight for Grace and Ted, the ring that she has part of her great grandmother's and his great grandmother's ring in it.
Oh, see, I didn't even know that.
Yeah. So, and at the beginning of the video, you can actually hear her saying that. So, like, I faked her out. She was talking to me, and I just pointed the camera at her, but I was making it look like I wasn't filming, so I could capture the audio.
Right.
But those are little things that are important. I think, really, obviously, video for your videographer, but also with your photographer, to maybe have those conversations ahead of time.
Well, I think that's a good point too. Is that sometimes it's when we talk about like timing and like timelines and things like that, like one of the nice things, that when we have, like, when the timeline isn't, super like boom, boom, boom. And like we have that time, because we talked to our brides and we're like, how important is that getting ready piece to you or whatever? And a lot of them are like, oh, it's not a big deal. But when we have that extra time, to spend with them when they're kind of, relaxed a little bit, just kind of sitting there getting ready, it does give us the opportunity to kind of maybe, ask, a little, some probing questions, about them, like how they met, or like, funny stories between the two of them, or whatnot. So it does enable us to kind of get a little bit of, as you can, I call them sound bites, but those kind of things that just adds another dimension, to a video as well.
Well, I think that it does fill in the gap, and so like here's ultimately where I was wanting to go with the memento piece of the, for the podcast, anyways, was that. Let's just say for us, our most popular package is the second package. That's 7 hours of coverage. One of the questions that we like to ask is, are you going to be doing any letters? Another question we ask is, are you doing traditional vows, or are you going to be doing, handwritten vows? And so ultimately, while we do incorporate a lot from the day with the memento pieces, like the small trinkets and stuff like that, being sentimental with writing your own letters, being sentimental with maybe during a first touch, having a brief moment while you speak, that helps fill out the gap. And sometimes we'll get weddings. Where we have first look, a letter reading, non-traditional vows, 7 speeches, and that's like, oh crap, how am I going to fit all this into like 7 to 9 minutes or 9 to 11 minutes? But there are other ones as well where it feels like there's not enough substance to fill the gap.
Yeah. At
least on the day of. But then obviously whenever I get into the editing piece of it, I'm like, okay, there is enough here. So, but I think that's why we like to ask couples as well. Like, are you planning on writing your own vows? Are you planning on writing letters to each other? And what are some of the things with the letters that you always try to bring up on our consultations, like on the importance of maybe having those moments, those sentimental moments that we can throw into the video, and why we're doing that?
Like, I mean, I don't ever want to like tell our brides, hey, you have to do this,
right,
or anything like that. I think we always do convey to them that, having those letters would provide a more personal touch to their video because it's individualized to them. But that, even like a gift can do the same type of thing, because...
Well, a gift can stir the same kind of reaction as well. And then all of a sudden you do have maybe that conversation you were talking about where, where it's not like you had said probing questions. We're not trying to get their like tax identification number and everything, but spur some conversation that, while the bride is mic'd up, or while the groom is mic'd up, that adds value to the day.
Well, I think like what's always funny is like when I'm hanging out with the guys or whatever, and so I'm kind of getting some B-roll of them just kind of chit-chatting and talking. And so usually, whenever I'm in the room at the very beginning, they're like a deer in the headlights. Like I'm, I know you're watching me, so I'm not gonna kind of behave like I normally would. And so I will usually ask them, so like, what do you guys do like normally? Like if I wasn't here, like, what do you guys normally do when you like hang out? Like, are you guys fishing crew? Or are you like, do we go, go hang out, watch a movie, or whatever? And they're just like, oh, the response is usually, I don't know, what we do. So maybe like, think about those things before the day of, and think about like, okay, like, what are the kind of things that we do? Just, to kind of open the dialogue up, so to speak. And,
well, I think one of the things for you that, that I do like to see after the fact is I don't review the footage until we get done. And that's with anyone. So whether it's Emmanuel and Brent, Gabe and Rebecca, or your footage, like I know what I shot, so I know what happened during the day. But like it's always like a treasure hunt, especially on the weddings that we have our teams on.
Right.
At least with you and I have somewhat of a clue of like, okay, this happened. But it's a matter of reviewing all their footage and like, and finding those things on top of it. And I always think that whether it's our team of you and I, or whether it's Emmanuel and Brent or Gabe and Rebecca, I think that the nature when it comes to the groomsmen are all the same. Like they're all very shy at first, and you would think that that's actually the opposite, because you get a bunch of guys together, like some of our weddings, like, they drink, some of them they don't, but their personalities are normally all the same. They're normally pretty shy at first. And then you have to impromptu, like give them a lead, like, hey, let's have you guys do this, because we want to have movement,
right?
For our video. And so we'll ask them to do something, and just seeing that. I think my favorite quote from the day is always, as soon as I put the mic on the guys, they're like, oh, you're hot mic'd. Right. Like it's always this big, thing or whatever. And then, like they all know about it. And that always prompts a big conversation. Or if I'll say, oh, just relax, be yourselves. The second comment is always like, oh, you don't know what you're saying with this group of guys, right. Like they always think they're like the worst, and they're like, they'll say some really bad words. And, I'm just like, okay, well. But there's a lot of really sentimental moments that come out of that, and so I think having that interaction, whether it's, we've had audio sound bites that we've been able to pull unexpectedly because of stuff like that have added sentimental value to the interaction with the groomsmen. Because like you said, sometimes that is like pulling teeth. Right. Whenever I think about the audio sound bites that we don't necessarily know we have until after the fact, there's two that come to mind. One is with Casey, whenever her dad was there that day. Right. Now, obviously, we did not have video. The minister had already spoke with him. And I was like, well, wait a minute. We had the officiant mic'd up. Right. And so I went back and listened to the officiant's audio, and I was able to find the conversation with, obviously her dad has passed since, but I was able to find audio of them talking. I was able to incorporate that into the video. Right. And then the second one that I think about is just a brief moment. It was a first look. It was a first look with the dad. And then so they were getting ready to do the family photos after that. And so the dad of the bride was standing next to the groom. And he would, the dad was like, she really is beautiful. And he's like, yes, she is. The groom saying that to the dad. And so like, I think that, a lot of people, we've kind of gone into a totally different avenue with this, but I think the added value of the audio that we bring into our videos helps to make it more sentimental, because it may not have been something that you brought sentimental the day of, but after you get the delivery of your product, it's something that you're going to look back on and see. And I know that Casey, for example, she's extremely appreciative of that. I didn't even know I had it. Right. Because I was actually almost done editing her video. Yeah. And then I had heard it in a different piece when I was trying to find something. And then that actually made me like reconstruct the whole video after the fact, because I knew how important that was. So yeah, but I think that's, a lot of times when we talk to couples, that's one of the things that is talked about the most. I think, we have our photographer, or like that's a comment that we hear a lot. Like, well, we have a photographer that, that we're good, we're covered. They can cover this piece. And they miss that. That's the biggest difference between
photography and videography is that videography is adding that dimension with adding the audio. And, you know, like when you think about it, like when you're watching a movie, like, you know, you have the music and you have the people talking, and like all of that is like affecting your senses like 3 times over because you have this other dimension that's affecting like your emotional, you know, triggers. And I think that's like the biggest benefit, and like why people should not like say, hey, this is just not in my budget. Like, I mean, I get it. Like sometimes you just can't do it, you know, and I totally respect that. I understand that. But if there is any way that, you know, you can work it out to provide, you know, to have that, I would always encourage people to have it, you know, especially like, you know, if you're able to, you know, have the full ceremony as well. Like a lot of times people are like, oh, I don't know how much I would actually go back and watch that. And I agree. I don't know. I don't think I would go back and like watch my full ceremony, you know, very often. But like, I know that that's one thing that like I really kind of regret for us is, it's like not I would love to like be able to show like the kids like, you know what you looked like that day.
What my petrified look that we've talked about on episode 2, I believe. So ding ding, go back and, you know, listen to that episode if you haven't already.
Yes.
So
well, not just that, but like just, you know, being able to like, you know, see like, you know, and I mean I was nervous too walking down the aisle, like I know that. But like being able to see like that commitment that we had made, and you know, those kind of things, I think it just adds, you know, such value. And
and I've said it before, and I know that we've said it in private, and we do, you know, tell our couples on our consultations, like at least the ones that seem to be on the fence, you know, obviously if we're having a consultation 9 out of 10 times the person's wanting to book a videographer to begin with, but those that are kind of on the fence, like well, we don't know if we want it, and I always try to relay to them exactly that. I think that for our price point, I'm just going to speak for us, okay? For our price point, I think it's an investment that pays for itself 1,000,000 times over and over and over prospectively through the years.
Yeah.
And I agree with you 100%. If there's any, well, and of course I'm biased, but I think it's a good bias because I mean, I had a conversation the other week with a bride after her wedding, that had, you know, I had been dropped into the middle of the day. And so there were things that were missed that she assumed the photographer was going to get. And so that was kind of a, you know, she was like, you know what, in hindsight, I really regret not listening to you guys because we don't have this. Is there any way you, and she's asking me questions like, is there any way you might have this? And of course I'm looking through the footage, and because of the fact that it was relayed that, okay, the other vendor is going to take care of this, it wasn't something that was on my radar.
Right.
You know, and so where like had we been there like the whole day, we probably would have had it.
Or if they had conveyed, hey, this, I need for you to make sure you get this.
And so I think that that's why like it's important to be having these conversations about, okay, what's important from the sentimental piece for the day, because like, for example, that same bride I was just, you know, referencing, her grandfather is in a rehab facility, and so she's going to show him like the video, and so that doesn't necessarily correlate to what I was just talking about, but sure, she could show him photos, but it's still not going to give the same, you know, the same feeling from the day as to being able to physically see what happened and hear what happened.
Right.
And I think that you definitely, well, you'll get me applauding that any day of the week whenever you start talking about audio, because it is definitely important, and the quality of your audio is important.
Yeah.
So it's not just a matter of having audio, it's a matter of making sure that you have professionals that are providing you with the best audio from the day as possible.
Yeah. I will say that's definitely something that you have converted me on, because I know when we first started, I was like, really, is it that big of a deal? And then I remembered like the first wedding that we had to actually use our backup, because I was just like, do you really need all these backups? And just like, yes, we do. Because if this happened, I was just like, oh, okay. And I remember like the first time that it happened, I was like, oh, okay, now I kind of understand. Or and then like when I see the difference between like when we have a mic, on the bride versus when we don't, and just like that, it's just a next level. And it's not like it wasn't good, but it just is so much better. And you can just see, like, you can just hear the difference between
that's because your brain processes audio first. So when it's seeing something, like a given TV as an example, like you did before, your brain is processing the audio before it's processing what it's seeing. But if you were to ask me, well, okay, what are the two most important things from the day of for us to capture? Number one is going to be audio above what we're already. I mean, not to say that we're not going to capture everything visually. We are. You would think that I would answer visual first, something visual. But my first answer is always going to be audio. And then number two is the candids with the couple, because that helps to bring a sentimentalism, from the day as they're looking back, and that, they kind of have those moments. Now, obviously, we're capturing the whole wedding and all that, and the other elements. But those two are definitely my biggest priorities, not just for us, but for our teams for the day of. That way we can bring a sentimental video to them. So
right.
But anyways, so I know that we kind of got a little, well, we didn't get sideways or sidetracked, but, we definitely kind of went a different avenue than what I was thinking there.
Well, because I think you were thinking like, material things. And for me, material things are not sentimental. Like to me, moments and things like that's sentimental. So I think that's why I said at the very beginning, like, sentiment is different for different people. So I think that's important to look at as well.
As we wrap up this episode of the Askem Studios Wedding Podcast, we just wanted to remind our couples and those that are maybe looking to book just the importance of this conversation right here in your planning process. When you're speaking with a prospective vendor, make sure that they're asking you these questions, or number two, you're asking some questions, in regards to this, because I think it helps keep everyone more prepared for the day as your day rapidly approaches, and just giving you the best overall product. So, Kelly, do you have any closing thoughts that you would like to add in?
Nope.
No, yeah, as quiet as normal. So, we're in the middle of July now. We're heading into August, and we're definitely very excited for the upcoming weddings that we have here. And so once again, not just to our couples, but to our teams, we're grateful for everybody that we have under the Askem Studios umbrella. And so we just cannot thank you guys enough. And we look forward to coming to you soon here with episode 7 of the Askem Studios Wedding Podcast. But for now, we're going to go ahead and land the plane. And, well, I guess I will see you probably about 5 minutes outside of this room, Kelly. So bye, Kelly.
Bye, Kelly.